Bianca's hand froze halfway to her mouth, the fork trembling as she watched her stepmom Diane reach across the kitchen island. The small white pill disappeared into the mashed potatoes on Bianca's plate with a practiced flick of Diane's wrist. Then came the gentle stir, blending the evidence into the creamy surface until nothing remained visible. Diane's perfectly manicured fingers moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before. The kitchen light caught the diamond bracelet on her wrist, the one Bianca's late mother used to wear. That bracelet alone made Bianca's stomach turn, but what she just witnessed made her blood run cold. Diane turned toward the sink, humming softly, completely unaware that Bianca had seen everything through the reflection in the glass cabinet door. Bianca's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Her beautiful dark skin felt clammy, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the air conditioning. She stood in the hallway pressed against the wall trying to control her breathing. What was she supposed to do? Call the police? Confront Diane? Run. Then clarity struck her like lightning. If she called the police now, Diane would deny everything. The pill was already dissolved. There was no proof. Bianca would look paranoid, maybe even unstable. That thought sent another chill through her body. Was that the plan all along? To make her seem crazy? Bianca's mind raced as she heard her father's voice from the living room, laughing at something on television. He had no idea what kind of woman he'd married 2 years ago. He had no idea that his new wife was trying to poison his daughter. She had to think fast. Diane would be carrying the plates to the dining room any second now. Bianca took 3 deep breaths, smoothed down her navy blue dress, and walked into the kitchen with a bright smile plastered on her face. Diane? Let me help you with those plates, Bianca said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. Diane jumped slightly, her hand moving to her chest. Oh, Bianca honey, you startled me. I didn't hear you come in. Sorry about that. I was just freshening up in the bathroom. Bianca moved closer to the counter where 2 identical plates sat, both filled with pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Her plate. Diane's plate. They looked exactly the same except Bianca knew which one contained the drug. Dad says dinner smells amazing. Well, I try. Diane's smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did when she looked at Bianca. Why don't you go sit down? I'll bring everything out. No, I insist. You've been cooking all afternoon. Let me carry something. Bianca reached for the plates before Diane could protest. Wait, that one's mine, Diane started, reaching for the plate on the left. Oh, sorry. Bianca laughed, deliberately fumbling the plates. She set them back down, but not in their original positions. In the brief moment of confusion, she'd switched them. Her drugged plate was now where Diane's had been. I'm so clumsy today. Which one's which again? Diane's eyes narrowed for just a second, studying the plates. But they looked identical. She couldn't tell them apart. Bianca held her breath, watching Diane's face carefully. This one's yours, Diane finally said, pointing to the plate that had originally been Bianca's. The drugged one. And this is mine. Got it? Bianca picked up the clean plate that had been meant for Diane. I'll take mine out. Be right back for yours. She walked into the dining room where her father, Thomas, sat at the head of the table reading something on his tablet. He was a distinguished man of 63, with gray hair and kind brown eyes that lit up when he saw his daughter. There's my girl, he said warmly. Diane outdid herself tonight. She sure did. Bianca set the plate down at her usual spot and returned to the kitchen. Diane was adding garnish to her plate, the drugged plate, with parsley. Bianca watched her, this woman who'd swooped into their lives 18 months after Bianca's mother died. Diane was 50 years old, blonde, and beautiful in a cold, calculated way. She'd played the grieving widow herself, having lost her own husband to cancer. She and Thomas had bonded over their shared loss. But Bianca had never trusted her. There was something off about Diane from the beginning. The way she looked at Bianca when Thomas wasn't watching. The comments about how much the house was worth, about Thomas's pension, about the inheritance Bianca's mother had left her. Ready? Diane asked, picking up her plate. Ready. Bianca followed her into the dining room, pulse racing. They sat down, Thomas at the head, Diane to his right, Bianca to his left. The family arrangement that had become routine over the past 2 years. Thomas said grace, something he'd started doing since marrying Diane. Bianca barely heard the words. She watched Diane from beneath her lashes, watched her cut into the pot roast, watched her take the first bite of mashed potatoes. Delicious as always, honey, Thomas said to Diane. Thank you, sweetheart. Diane smiled at him, then took another forkful of potatoes. Then another. She ate normally, chatting with Thomas about his day at the insurance office where he worked part-time. Bianca forced herself to eat too, to act natural, even though every bite tasted like cardboard. 10 minutes passed. 15. Bianca began to wonder if she'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it wasn't a drug. Maybe it was a vitamin or something innocent. Then Diane's fork clattered to her plate. "You okay, honey?" Thomas asked, looking at his wife with concern. I feel a bit strange." Diane's words came out slightly slurred. She blinked hard, shaking her head. "Must be. I don't know. Tired." "Maybe you should lie down," Bianca suggested, her voice sweet. "You've been working so hard." "No, I'm fine. Just need." Diane stood up, swaying. She gripped the edge of the table. "Excuse me. Bathroom." She stumbled toward the hallway. Thomas started to rise, but Bianca touched his arm. "Let me check on her, Dad." "Finish your dinner." Bianca followed Diane down the hallway. She heard the bathroom door close but not lock. Waited 30 seconds. Then she slowly pushed the door open. Diane lay crumpled on the tile floor, unconscious. Bianca stood there for a long moment, staring down at the woman who'd tried to drug her. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. But before she did, she knelt down and carefully opened Diane's designer purse that had fallen beside her. Inside, she found a prescription bottle with someone else's name on it. Strong sedatives. She found a folder containing documents. And as she looked through them, her hands began to shake again. Medical commitment papers. With Bianca's name on them. Forged psychiatric evaluations declaring her mentally unstable and a danger to herself. Authorization forms to have her involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility. Bianca photographed everything with her phone, her mind racing. This wasn't just about drugging her at dinner. This was a complete plan to have her locked away. "Bianca." Her father's voice called from the dining room. "Everything okay?" "Call 911, Dad." Bianca shouted back. Diane collapsed. As she heard her father's panicked footsteps approaching, Bianca quickly put everything back in the purse except the pill bottle. She kept that in her hand, evidence of what Diane had tried to do. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. Police followed. And as they loaded Diane onto a stretcher, Bianca knew this was only the beginning. She'd swapped the plates and saved herself tonight. But now she needed to make sure Diane never got the chance to try again. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Bianca sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, her father pacing in front of her, worry etched into every line of his face. She held the prescription bottle in her lap, turning it over in her hands. The name on the label was Patricia Hendricks. Not Diane. Not anyone Bianca recognized. "I don't understand," Thomas kept saying, running his hands through his gray hair. "She was fine this morning. Maybe she had a reaction to something? She's been stressed lately with the charity gala planning." Bianca said nothing. She'd shown him the bottle, but he dismissed it as something Diane might have picked up from a friend. He always made excuses for her. Always saw the best in people. It was one of the things Bianca had always loved about her father, but right now it made her want to scream. A doctor emerged through the double doors looking tired. "Mr. Morrison?" Thomas rushed over. "Yes, that's me. How's my wife?" "She's stable. We pumped her stomach and she's sleeping now. It appears she ingested a large dose of sedatives. Can you tell me if she's been depressed lately? Any talk of self-harm?" "What? No. Diane would never." Thomas's face went pale. "The amount in her system suggests this wasn't accidental," the doctor continued gently. "We're required to call in a psychiatric evaluation before we can release her. It's standard procedure in these cases." Bianca almost laughed at the irony. Diane was going to get the psychiatric evaluation she'd planned to force on Bianca. "There must be some mistake," Thomas insisted. "Dad," Bianca spoke up, standing. "Can I talk to you privately?" They moved to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Bianca pulled out her phone and showed him the photos she'd taken. The forged documents. The commitment papers. The text messages. She'd found in Diane's phone before the paramedics arrived, messages to a lawyer about handling the stepdaughter situation. Thomas stared at the screen, his face going from pale to red to pale again. "This can't be real." "It's real, Dad. She drugged my dinner tonight. I saw her do it. I switched our plates when she wasn't looking. That's why she's in there instead of me." "Bianca, that's insane. Why would Diane want to hurt you? Look at the dates on these messages, Dad." Bianca scrolled through the photos. "She's been planning this for months. If she got me committed, my trust fund from Mom would revert to you. And since you're married to Diane, that means it goes to her too. Thomas sank into a chair, his face in his hands. No. No, I don't believe it. Believe it? Bianca's voice was hard. I need you to listen to me now. When the police come to take my statement, I'm telling them everything. I have evidence. I have photos. And I need you to be on my side. Before Thomas could respond, 2 police officers approached them. One was a tall black woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. The other was a younger white man with a notebook. I'm Detective Patricia Patterson, the woman said. This is Officer Lopez. We need to ask you both some questions about tonight. They moved to a private consultation room. Bianca told them everything, showing them the photos on her phone. Detective Patterson's expression grew more serious with each image. Ms. Morrison, these are very serious allegations, Patterson said carefully. You're saying your stepmother attempted to poison you? I'm saying I watched her put a pill in my food. I'm saying I have photos of forged documents that show she planned to have me institutionalized. I'm saying the sedatives in her system right now were meant for me. Did anyone else see her put something in your food? No. But I have the bottle. Bianca handed over the prescription bottle. It's not prescribed to her. Officer Lopez wrote everything down. Detective Patterson studied the photos on Bianca's phone, then asked permission to send them to her own device. Bianca agreed. This Patricia Hendricks whose name is on the bottle, Patterson said. Do you know her? Never heard of her. We'll look into it. Patterson's voice was neutral, professional. But Bianca saw something in her eyes. Belief. Ms. Morrison, I want you to know we take this very seriously. If what you're saying is true, your stepmother attempted to commit a serious crime. If. Thomas spoke up, his voice strained. You think my daughter is lying? I think we need to investigate thoroughly before making any conclusions, Patterson said. But I will tell you this, those documents in the photos look professionally forged. That takes resources and planning. This isn't something that happened on impulse. Over the next hour, they went through every detail of the evening. What time Bianca arrived at the house. The layout of the kitchen. The exact moment she saw Diane drop the pill. How she switched the plates. Patterson asked the same questions multiple ways, looking for inconsistencies. Bianca answered each one calmly, truthfully. Finally, Patterson closed her notebook. We're going to need to take your phone as evidence, Ms. Morrison. We'll get you a receipt and return it as soon as possible. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you stay somewhere other than your father's house tonight. She can't stay there anyway, Thomas said quietly. Not with Diane. Dad. No, Bianca. If there's even a chance what you're saying is true. He couldn't finish the sentence. His whole world was crumbling. The woman he'd loved, trusted, married, she might be a monster. Bianca ended up at a hotel that night, one of the nice ones downtown with good security. Detective Patterson had suggested it. Thomas paid for the room, then hugged Bianca so tight she could barely breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. It's not your fault, Dad. I brought her into our lives. Into your life. He pulled back, tears in his eyes. Your mother would never forgive me. Mom would want you to be happy. Diane fooled both of us. Bianca touched his face gently. Go home. Get some rest. We'll figure this out. After he left, Bianca sat on the hotel bed and finally let herself shake. The adrenaline that had kept her going all evening drained away, leaving her exhausted and terrified. She'd saved herself tonight, but what came next? Her phone buzzed. Detective Patterson had returned it with a message. We found Patricia Hendricks. She reported her prescription stolen 3 weeks ago. Also found something else. We'll call you tomorrow. Bianca stared at the message. What else had Patterson found? She didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Diane's hand moving over her plate, saw that pill disappearing into the mashed potatoes. She kept thinking about what would have happened if she hadn't seen it. If she'd eaten that food. Would she have woken up in a psychiatric facility, drugged and helpless, with no one believing her protests? The next morning, Patterson called at 8 o'clock sharp. Ms. Morrison, I need you to come down to the station. There's someone here I think you should meet. Who? Her name is Nicole Wright. She was Diane's stepdaughter from her previous marriage. Bianca's blood ran cold. Was? She spent 2 years in a psychiatric facility, Patterson said grimly. After Diane had her committed. We need to talk. The police station was busy even at 9 in the morning. Detective Patterson led Bianca through a maze of desks to a quiet interview room. Inside sat a woman about Bianca's age, late 20s, with auburn hair and tired green eyes. She looked up when Bianca entered, and something like recognition flashed across her face. "You must be Bianca," the woman said softly. "I'm Nicole." They sat across from each other while Patterson explained how she'd found Nicole. After seeing the forged documents in Bianca's photos, Patterson had run a background check on Diane. She discovered Diane had been married twice before Thomas. The first husband died in a car accident. The second, Nicole's father, died of a heart attack. Both left substantial estates. "My father died 4 years ago," Nicole said, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. "I was 26. Diane had married him 2 years earlier. I never liked her, but Dad was happy, so I tried to make peace." She paused, her jaw tightening. 3 months after he died, I started having dizzy spells. Memory problems. I black out sometimes. My friend said I was acting strange, saying things I didn't remember saying. Bianca leaned forward. "Diane was drugging you. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was losing my mind. So did everyone else. Diane was so concerned, so caring. She took me to doctors, stayed by my side. And then one day I woke up in a psychiatric hospital. Diane had me committed. She had documents showing I was a danger to myself and others." "Forged documents," Patterson added. "Just like the ones we found for Bianca." "I spent 2 years there," Nicole continued, her voice breaking slightly. 2 years drugged and locked up while Diane took control of my father's estate. By the time I got out and proved I wasn't mentally ill, most of the money was gone. Diane had transferred it offshore, hidden it in shell companies. I spent another year fighting in court, but I only recovered a fraction of what she stole." Bianca felt sick. "Why didn't she go to jail?" "No proof," Nicole said bitterly. "She was smart. The drugs she used left my system quickly. The transfers looked legal on paper. And I had a diagnosis of mental illness that made my accusations seem like delusions. Her lawyers destroyed me in court. But this time we have proof," Patterson said firmly. "Bianca's photos, the prescription bottle, the timeline. And now we have Nicole's testimony showing a pattern of behavior." "Will that be enough?" Bianca asked. "I think so. Especially because we found something else." Patterson pulled out a file. "I contacted the hospital where Nicole was held. Guess who was one of the evaluating psychiatrists who signed off on her commitment?" "Who?" "Dr. Robert Chin. The same doctor whose signature appears on your forged evaluation documents, Bianca." Patterson smiled grimly. "Except Dr. Chin retired 3 years ago and moved to Florida. He never evaluated you. His signature was forged." Nicole sat up straighter. "He evaluated me too. Or at least, his signature was on my papers. I never actually met him." "Because Diane forged his signature both times," Patterson concluded. "She found a retired psychiatrist and used his credentials to make the documents look legitimate. That's fraud. That's conspiracy. And combined with the attempted poisoning, we have a real case." Bianca's hands trembled with relief and rage. "So what happens now?" "Now I go to the prosecutor. We build a case. And I need both of you to be willing to testify." Patterson looked between them. "Nicole, I know you've been through hell already. But if we're going to stop Diane from doing this again, we need you." "I'll do it," Nicole said immediately. "I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes." She looked at Bianca. "I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry I didn't come forward before. I thought no one would believe me." "I believe you," Bianca said. "And I'm going to make sure she pays for what she did to both of us." They exchanged phone numbers before Nicole left. Patterson kept Bianca behind to go over more details. They needed to establish a timeline, gather more evidence, interview everyone who'd been at the dinner that night. "Your father's been calling," Patterson said. "He wants to see you." "How's Diane?" "Awake and demanding a lawyer. She's claiming she accidentally took too much of her own medication. Says she has a prescription for anxiety and got confused about the dosage." "That's a lie." "I know. But it's what she's saying. Her lawyer is already trying to spin this as a tragic misunderstanding and paint you as an opportunist trying to frame her." Patterson's eyes were hard. "That's why we need everything documented. Every piece of evidence matters." Bianca spent the next 3 hours at the police station going over every detail of her relationship with Diane. The little things that had seemed odd at the time but not quite concerning enough to act on. How Diane had slowly isolated Thomas from his friends. How she'd taken control of the household finances. How she always seemed to be pushing Bianca to move away, to take jobs in other cities, to distance herself from her father. "She was setting the stage," Patterson explained. "If you'd moved away, it would have been easier to have you committed without anyone questioning it. Your father would have believed you were having a breakdown alone in a strange city. By the time anyone realized what was happening, you'd be locked up and Diane would have control of everything. The thought made Bianca's skin crawl. When she finally left the police station, it was early afternoon. She called her father, who insisted on meeting her for lunch. They sat in a quiet corner booth at a diner, both of them picking at their food. Detective Patterson told me about Nicole, Thomas said. His eyes were red like he'd been crying. About what Diane did to her. Did you believe it? I didn't want to. But then I started thinking about things. About how Diane always wanted to know where you were, what you were doing. About how she'd get upset when you visited. About the time she suggested you might benefit from therapy. He pushed his plate away. She said you seemed depressed. She was worried about you. I thought she was being caring. She was building a narrative, Bianca said. Making everyone think I was unstable so that when she made her move, people would believe her. I'm so stupid. Thomas put his head in his hands. No, Dad. You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. Bianca reached across the table and took his hand. Diane is a con artist. She's done this before. She knew exactly what to do, exactly what to say. You were grieving Mom, lonely, vulnerable. She targeted you. I betrayed your mother's memory. No. You tried to move on with your life. That's not betrayal. That's survival. Bianca squeezed his hand. But now we need to fight back. Detective Patterson is building a case, but I need you to be strong. Diane's lawyers are going to try to defend her. They're going to try to make me look like I'm lying. I'll do whatever it takes, Thomas said fiercely. I'll testify against her. I'll give them access to all our financial records. I'll show them how she's been controlling our money. He paused. I'm filing for divorce immediately. Good. And Bianca? He looked at her with desperate eyes. I know I can't fix what happened. I know I brought this woman into your life and nearly got you killed. But I'm your father. I'm supposed to protect you. Let me help now. Let me make this right. You can help by telling the truth, Bianca said. That's all I need from you. Over the next few days, the investigation moved quickly. Detective Patterson got a warrant for Diane's phone and computer. They found months of internet searches about how to force psychiatric commitments, about what drugs were hard to detect, about how to forge medical documents. They found emails to the lawyer about eliminating obstacles to accessing Thomas's full estate. They also found something else. Diane had been planning to drug Thomas too once Bianca was out of the way. Make him dependent on her, control him completely. There were notes about increasing his blood pressure medication, about making him seem confused and forgetful. When Patterson told Bianca about this, she felt cold all over. She was going to kill him eventually, wasn't she? I think that was the long-term plan, Patterson admitted. Make him sick, inherit everything, move on to the next target. How many times has she done this? We're looking into her history now. So far, we've confirmed 2 previous husbands, both dead under questionable circumstances. But we think there might be more. The prosecutor's office charged Diane with attempted poisoning, forgery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. She was denied bail due to flight risk. Her lawyer held a press conference claiming this was a case of a scheming stepdaughter trying to frame an innocent woman for her own gain. Bianca watched the press conference from her hotel room, rage building in her chest. But she didn't respond publicly. Patterson had advised her to stay quiet, let the evidence speak for itself. Nicole called that evening. I saw the news. Are you okay? I'm angry, Bianca admitted. Good. Use that anger. Don't let them make you feel crazy. I made that mistake. I let them get in my head, make me doubt myself. Nicole's voice was stronger now. But you have something I didn't have. You have proof. You have me. And you're going to win. How did you survive? Bianca asked. 2 years locked up, then losing everything? I didn't, not at first. I fell apart for a while. But then I got mad. I rebuilt my life slowly, piece by piece. I went back to school. I started over. And I promised myself that if I ever got the chance to stop Diane from doing this to someone else, I would take it. Nicole paused. That chance is now. We're going to destroy her, Bianca. Together. That night, lying in her hotel bed, Bianca thought about her mother. She thought about how her mom had worked so hard to build something to leave behind for her daughter. She thought about how Diane had tried to steal all of that, to erase Bianca's existence and her mother's legacy. But Bianca had switched the plates. She'd saved herself. And now she was going to make sure Diane never hurt anyone again. The war had only just begun. 3 weeks after the incident, Bianca sat in the office of Grace Hamilton, one of the best defense attorneys in the city. Grace was a black woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her hair and a reputation for winning impossible cases. She'd taken Bianca's case after hearing about it from Detective Patterson. "Here's where we stand," Grace said, spreading documents across her massive oak desk. "The prosecution has a strong criminal case against Diane. But we need to think bigger than that. We need to go after her civilly too. We need to make sure she can't touch you or your father's money ever again." "I want her in prison," Bianca said. "She will be. But we also need to protect your assets, void your father's marriage to her, and potentially go after her for damages." Grace tapped her pen against the desk. "That's where my partner Jerome comes in." Jerome was the private investigator Grace worked with regularly. He was a quiet man in his 40s with sharp eyes and an attention to detail that bordered on obsessive. Over the past 3 weeks, he'd been digging into Diane's entire life. Diane wasn't even her real name, Jerome said, opening his laptop to show them his findings. She was born Diane Shapiro. Changed it to Diane Sterling when she was 25. Before that, she had 3 arrests for fraud and identity theft in her early 20s. Nothing that stuck, but a pattern was there. Bianca leaned forward, studying the documents. "How many husbands?" 5 total that we can confirm. Thomas is number 5. The first husband she married at age 27. He was 72, wealthy, died within a year. Left everything to Diane. Family contested the will but lost. Second husband was 55, married when Diane was 32. He died in what was ruled a suicide 2 years later. Again, everything to Diane. "And Nicole's father was number 3, Bianca said. "Right. Number 4 was a man named Robert Garcia. Tech entrepreneur, 45 years old when he married Diane. He's still alive." Jerome pulled up a photo. "I tracked him down in Nevada. He's willing to talk." Grace raised an eyebrow. "How did he escape?" His business partner got suspicious. Diane tried to isolate Robert from his work, but the partner kept pushing back. When Robert started showing signs of cognitive decline, the partner hired a private doctor who found unusual substances in his blood. They confronted Diane and she fled before they could press charges. "We need to talk to him," Bianca said immediately. 2 days later, Bianca and Grace flew to Nevada. Robert Garcia lived in a modest house outside Las Vegas, a far cry from the mansion Jerome's research said he'd owned before meeting Diane. He was a thin man with hollow eyes who looked older than his 50 years. "She took everything," Robert said as they sat in his living room. "My company, my savings, my health. I was drugged for months before my partner figured it out. By the time we realized what was happening, Diane had transferred millions out of our accounts." "Why didn't you press charges?" Grace asked. "I was scared. She threatened me. Said if I went to the police, she'd claim I was the one who tried to poison her. She'd prepared evidence, documents, witness statements, all fake but convincing. My lawyer said it would be my word against hers, and I was already seen as mentally unstable because of the drugs." Robert's hands shook. "I let her go. I just wanted her out of my life." "She's done this to at least 5 people we know of," Bianca said. "How many others?" "I've spent years wondering that," Robert admitted. "After she left, I hired investigators. They found 2 more possible victims before her first marriage. An older man in Florida who died suspiciously. A woman in Texas who ended up in a nursing home with early-onset dementia, except the dementia disappeared after Diane was no longer around." Grace recorded everything carefully. "Would you be willing to testify?" "Yes. I should have done it years ago. Maybe I could have stopped her before she got to you." Robert looked at Bianca with genuine remorse. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Bianca said, though part of her wondered if things would have been different if Robert had been braver. But she understood. Fear was powerful. Diane was powerful. Until now. Back home, Jerome continued his investigation. He found the lawyer Diane had been communicating with about Bianca's commitment. The lawyer claimed attorney-client privilege, but Jerome found a paralegal from the office willing to talk off the record. Diane had paid them $50,000 to prepare the fake documents and bribe someone at a psychiatric facility to accept Bianca without proper evaluation. "She had this plan down to the minute," Jerome explained, showing Bianca the timeline he'd constructed. "The dinner party was scheduled for a Friday. She'd drug you, call 911 claiming you tried to hurt yourself. You'd be taken to the hospital, evaluated by the bribed psychiatrist, and committed within 24 hours. By Monday morning, you'd be locked up and she'd have emergency power of attorney over your affairs." Bianca felt sick reading through the plan. It was so thorough, so calculated. If she hadn't seen Diane drop that pill, she'd be in a psychiatric facility right now, drugged and helpless. What about my father? Bianca asked. Did she have plans for him too? Jerome pulled up another file. She'd been slowly increasing his blood pressure medication without his knowledge. We found bottles in her nightstand, the same pills he takes but a higher dosage. She'd been switching them out. Over time it would cause serious health problems. Maybe even a fatal stroke or heart attack. So she was trying to kill him too. Slowly. Once you were out of the way and she had control of everything, I think she planned to accelerate his decline. Probably within a year, he'd be dead and she'd inherit everything with no one left to contest it. Grace reviewed all the evidence Jerome had gathered. This is good. This is very good. But we need more for the civil case. We need to find where she hid the money from Nicole's father and Robert Garcia. That became Bianca's mission for the next few weeks. She worked with a forensic accountant recommended by Grace, tracing Diane's financial history. It was like following a maze of shell corporations and offshore accounts. But slowly, patterns emerged. She uses the same structures every time, the accountant explained. Different names, different banks, but the same basic setup. Money gets transferred to a company in the Cayman Islands, then moved through 3 more entities before landing in a Swiss account. Can we get access to those accounts? That's the tricky part. Swiss banks are notoriously private. But if we can prove the money was obtained through fraud, we might be able to freeze the accounts and petition for repatriation. It was exhausting work, but Bianca threw herself into it. She spent hours reviewing financial documents, making lists, building connections. Grace filed civil suits on behalf of both Bianca and Nicole, claiming fraud, emotional distress, and attempted theft. They also filed on behalf of Robert Garcia, who was grateful to finally have a chance at justice. Meanwhile, the criminal case moved forward. Detective Patterson arrested 2 more people, the paralegal who'd prepared the fake commitment documents and a psychiatric nurse who'd been paid to accept Bianca at the facility without proper evaluation. Both agreed to testify against Diane in exchange for reduced charges. The case was building. Every day brought new evidence, new witnesses, new proof of Diane's guilt. But Diane's lawyers fought back hard. They filed motions to suppress evidence, claiming illegal search and seizure. They attacked Bianca's character, suggesting she was vindictive and making false accusations. They brought in their own experts who claimed the forged documents could have been created by anyone. They're trying to muddy the waters, Grace explained. Make the jury doubt what they're seeing. That's why we need the trial to be airtight. No room for doubt. Bianca met with Nicole regularly during this time. They'd formed a strange but strong bond, 2 women connected by the same predator. Nicole had rebuilt her life, working as a counselor now, helping others who'd been abused. She was Bianca's proof that survival was possible, that there was life after Diane. How's your father doing? Nicole asked one afternoon as they had coffee. Better. He's in therapy dealing with the guilt. He's cooperating fully with the investigation. Bianca stirred her coffee slowly. I think he finally understands what she was. My father never got that chance, Nicole said quietly. He died believing she loved him. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just make sure your dad knows the truth. Make sure he knows this wasn't his fault. Nicole looked out the window. Diane is good at what she does. She finds vulnerable people and exploits them. Your father wasn't weak or stupid. He was grieving. She used that. Bianca nodded. She'd been telling her father the same thing, but hearing it from Nicole seemed to help him understand better. They'd started having dinner together once a week, rebuilding their relationship that Diane had tried so hard to destroy. 1 month after the incident, Jerome made a breakthrough. He found a witness in the Cayman Islands, an employee at one of the banks Diane used. The employee had noticed irregularities in the accounts and reported them to their supervisor, but nothing had been done. Now, with immunity and witness protection in place, they were willing to testify about the shell corporations and money laundering. This is it, Grace said when she heard the news. This gives us proof of the offshore accounts. Combined with everything else, Diane has no defense. But Diane's lawyers had one more card to play. They filed a motion claiming Bianca had orchestrated the entire thing, that she'd drugged Diane herself to frame her. They suggested Bianca was the real predator, trying to steal her father's money by eliminating his wife. The accusation was so absurd that Bianca almost laughed when she heard it. But Grace didn't laugh. They're desperate, Grace said. But desperate lawyers can be dangerous. We need to destroy this narrative completely. That's when Detective Patterson came through with the final piece of evidence. Security footage from a store near Thomas's house showed Diane purchasing a mortar and pestle 3 days before the dinner party. The same type of tool that would be used to crush pills into powder. Combined with her internet search history about dissolving medication in food, it was damning proof of premeditation. "We have her," Patterson said simply. "There's no way out now." The trial date was set for 3 months away. In the meantime, Bianca tried to reclaim her life. She moved out of the hotel and into a new apartment, one that felt safe and separate from everything that had happened. She started seeing a therapist to process the trauma. She reconnected with friends she'd drifted away from during Diane's time in their lives. And she began to think about the future. About what she wanted to do with the second chance she'd given herself by switching those plates. About how she could turn this nightmare into something meaningful. An idea was forming in her mind, something that would honor her mother's memory and help others who'd suffered like she and Nicole had. But first she needed to finish what she'd started. She needed to watch Diane go down. The conference room at Grace's law office felt too small for the emotion filling it. Bianca sat across from her father, both of them flanked by lawyers. Between them on the table sat a stack of documents an inch thick, evidence of Diane's crimes, her plans, her manipulation. Thomas looked 10 years older than he had 3 months ago. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and his hair seemed grayer. But his jaw was set with determination. This wasn't the man who'd made excuses for Diane anymore. This was a man who'd seen the truth and was ready to act. "Before we go any further," Grace said, looking at Thomas, "I need to make sure you understand what we're asking. Testifying against your wife, even though you're divorcing her, is difficult. Her lawyers will attack you. They'll suggest you're being manipulated by your daughter. They'll try to paint you as weak or senile." "Let them try," Thomas said firmly. "I know what Diane is now. I know what she tried to do to my daughter. To me. To everyone she's ever touched." He looked at Bianca. "I should have protected you. I didn't. The least I can do now is tell the truth." Jerome spread out a timeline across the table. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to walk us through your relationship with Diane from the beginning. Every detail matters." For the next 3 hours, Thomas recounted how he'd met Diane at a grief support group 18 months after Bianca's mother died. How she'd seemed perfect, understanding, patient, supportive. How she'd encouraged him to join her for coffee after meetings. How slowly, carefully, she'd worked her way into his life. "She never pushed," Thomas explained. "That's what made it seem so real. She always let me make the first move, or at least made me think I was. Looking back now, I can see how she manipulated every conversation, every interaction. But at the time, I thought I was falling in love naturally." "When did she start isolating you from your friends?" Grace asked. "It was subtle. She'd suggest they were tiring me out, that I needed to rest more. Or she'd schedule things on nights I usually met with friends. After a while, it was easier to just stay home with her." Thomas rubbed his face. "Then she started managing our finances. She said I was stressed, that she wanted to help. I gave her access to everything." Bianca's hands clenched into fists under the table. She'd watched this happen in real time but hadn't recognized it for what it was. She'd thought Diane was just trying to be helpful, trying to take care of her grieving husband. "When did she first suggest Bianca might have mental health issues?" Jerome asked. Thomas thought carefully. "Maybe 6 months after we got married." "Bianca had been distant?" He looked at his daughter apologetically. "I thought it was because you were adjusting to me being remarried. But Diane kept pointing out little things. Said you seemed anxious, that you were avoiding family dinners. She showed me articles about depression and suggested you might benefit from therapy." "I wasn't depressed," Bianca said. "I was uncomfortable around her. I know that now. But Diane was so convincing. She made everything seem like it came from a place of love and concern." Thomas's voice cracked. "She played me perfectly. They went through everything. The financial transfers Diane had made, the life insurance policies she'd taken out on Thomas without fully explaining them, the time she'd pressured him to update his will. Each revelation made Thomas look sicker. "There's something else," Detective Patterson said, entering the room with a new file. "We tracked down Diane's sister. She's been estranged from Diane for 15 years, but she's willing to talk." The sister's name was Margaret. She'd agreed to a video call, her face appearing on the large monitor in the conference room. She was older than Diane, with the same bone structure but kinder eyes. "I cut ties with my sister in 2010, Margaret said. "After I realized what she was." "What made you realize?" Grace asked. "Our mother died that year. Left us both an inheritance. Within 6 months, Diane had somehow gotten me to sign power of attorney over to her, claiming she'd handle all the estate details. Then she drained my portion of the inheritance and disappeared. By the time I realized what happened, the money was gone and Diane had moved to another state. Did you press charges? I tried. But she'd covered her tracks perfectly. Made it look like I'd authorized the transfers. My own lawyers said I didn't have a case. Margaret's expression was pained. I spent years trying to warn people about her. But she just moved to new cities, changed her name slightly, found new victims. I couldn't keep up. Why didn't you come forward when she married Mr. Morrison? Jerome asked. I didn't know about it until I saw her picture in the news after the poisoning incident. She'd been using Diane Sterling. I knew her as Diane Shapiro. Different last names, different cities. I lost track of her years ago. Margaret looked directly at Bianca through the screen. I'm so sorry I couldn't warn you sooner. It's not your fault, Bianca said, though part of her wondered how different things might have been if Margaret had found them earlier. After the call ended, Grace compiled everything into a comprehensive brief for the prosecutor. It painted a picture of a serial predator who'd been operating for decades, leaving destroyed lives and stolen fortunes in her wake. This is bigger than we thought, Grace said. Diane isn't just a con artist. She's a serial predator. We need to make sure the prosecutor understands the scope of this. That evening, Bianca finally confronted Diane face to face. It wasn't planned, Grace had advised against it, but Bianca needed to look the woman in the eye before the trial. She went to the county jail where Diane was being held, signed in as a visitor, and waited in the cold, fluorescent-lit visiting room. When Diane was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, their eyes met through the glass partition. Diane looked older without her makeup and expensive clothes. But her eyes were still sharp, calculating. She picked up the phone on her side of the glass. Bianca picked up hers. Well, Diane said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Come to gloat. No. I came to tell you that you're going to prison for a long time. And when you get out, if you get out, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. Diane laughed, the sound harsh through the phone. You think you've won? You're just a spoiled little girl who got lucky. If you hadn't switched those plates. But I did switch them. I saw what you did and I protected myself. And now you're going to pay for everything you've done. Not just to me but to Nicole, to Robert, to everyone you've ever hurt. You can't prove anything, Diane said, but there was less confidence in her voice now. We have everything. Your search history. The security footage of you buying the mortar and pestle. The forged documents. The shell corporations. The witness from the Cayman Islands. Your sister's testimony. Robert Garcia's testimony. Nicole's testimony. Bianca leaned forward. We have you, Diane. You're finished. For the first time, Diane's mask slipped. Rage flashed across her face, raw and ugly. Your mother was weak. Your father is weak. You're all weak. I could have had everything if you hadn't. If I hadn't what? Saved my own life? Refused to be your victim? Bianca stood up. You're the weak one, Diane. You're a parasite who couldn't build anything on your own, so you stole from people who trusted you. That's not strength. That's pathetic. I'll get out, Diane hissed. My lawyers are good. I'll get out and then? Then what? You'll come after me? Go ahead and try. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Bianca smiled coldly. I was never the helpless stepdaughter you thought I was. You chose the wrong target. She hung up the phone and walked out without looking back. Behind her, she could hear Diane shouting something, but the words didn't matter. Diane had no power anymore. That night, Bianca met Nicole and Grace for dinner. They toasted with sparkling water, no alcohol. They all wanted clear heads for the trial ahead. How do you feel? Nicole asked Bianca. Strong, Bianca said, surprised to realize it was true. For the first time in months, I feel strong. Good. Hold on to that feeling. You're going to need it. Nicole squeezed her hand. The trial won't be easy. Diane's lawyers will try to break you on the stand. Let them try. Grace raised her glass. To refusing to be victims. To fighting back. To winning. They clinked glasses. Bianca looked at these women who'd become her allies, her friends, her sisters in survival. She thought about her mother, who'd taught her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone diminish her. Mom would be proud, Bianca said softly. She would be, her father's voice said from behind her. He'd appeared at their table, looking uncertain. I hope I'm not interrupting. Dad. Sit down. Thomas joined them, ordering coffee. I wanted to apologize to all of you. To Nicole for not seeing what Diane did to you. To Grace for being blind for so long. And to you, Bianca, for bringing that monster into our lives. You didn't know, Bianca said. I should have. There were signs. I just didn't want to see them. Thomas looked at Nicole. I'm testifying at the trial. I'm going to tell them everything. And afterwards, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure people know about predators like Diane. How? Nicole asked. I'm starting a foundation. For people who've been financially abused by family members or spouses. Education, legal support, counseling. Whatever they need. Thomas pulled out a folder. I've already filed the paperwork. It's called the Sarah Morrison Foundation, after Bianca's mother. Bianca's eyes filled with tears. Dad. Your mother would want something good to come from this. She'd want us to help others. So that's what we're going to do. He looked around the table. All of us. If you'll help me. Nicole nodded immediately. I'm in. Me too, Grace said. Bianca couldn't speak. She just reached across the table and took her father's hand, squeezing tight. This was how they'd win. Not just by putting Diane in prison, but by building something that would outlast her, something that would protect others from predators like her. The war wasn't over yet. The trial still loomed ahead, and Diane's lawyers would fight with everything they had. But sitting there with her father, with Nicole, with Grace, Bianca knew they'd already won something important. They'd refused to be destroyed. They'd chosen to fight back. And now they were going to make sure no one else suffered the way they had. Diane thought she was a predator hunting weak prey. But she'd underestimated every single one of them. And that mistake was going to cost her everything. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters when Bianca arrived on the first day of the trial. Cameras flashed as she climbed toward the entrance, Grace on one side, her father on the other. Nicole waited inside, away from the cameras, preparing for her testimony. Ms. Morrison, do you think justice will be served? Bianca, what do you want to say to Diane Sterling? Mr. Morrison, do you regret marrying the defendant? Grace had coached Bianca on this moment. Don't engage. Don't respond. Let the evidence speak. So Bianca kept her head high and her eyes forward, pushing through the crowd into the relative quiet of the courthouse. Inside, the courtroom was already filling up. The prosecution table was commanded by District Attorney Kenneth Shaw, a veteran prosecutor with a reputation for winning complex fraud cases. He'd taken the case personally after reviewing all the evidence. Ready? Shaw asked as Bianca approached. Ready. Across the aisle, Diane sat between her two lawyers. She'd transformed herself for trial, hair pulled back in a conservative bun, minimal makeup, a modest navy suit that made her look innocent and vulnerable. When she saw Bianca, her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. All rise, the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Maria Santos presiding. Judge Santos was a stern woman in her 60s known for having no patience for courtroom games. She took her seat, surveyed the packed room and banged her gavel once. Let's proceed. The trial began with opening statements. Shaw laid out the prosecution's case methodically. The drugging attempt, the forged documents, the pattern of behavior spanning decades, the conspiracy to steal Bianca's inheritance. He used charts and timelines, making the complex scheme understandable. The evidence will show that Diane Sterling, also known as Diane Shapiro, Diane Morrison, and several other aliases, is a serial predator, Shaw declared. She targets vulnerable people, manipulates them, marries them, and then systematically destroys their lives to steal their money. She's done it at least 5 times before. Bianca Morrison would have been her 6th victim if she hadn't been brave enough and smart enough to switch those plates. Diane's lead attorney, Marcus. Wait, no, his name was Peter Walsh, stood for the defense's opening statement. He was smooth, polished, expensive. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you're going to hear a lot of accusations over the next few weeks, Walsh began. You're going to hear about past marriages, about money, about alleged schemes. But here's what you won't hear. Actual proof that my client tried to poison anyone. What you will hear is a story of a troubled young woman who resented her stepmother, who wanted her father all to herself, and who concocted an elaborate frame-up to get rid of the woman she saw as competition. Bianca's jaw clenched, but Grace squeezed her hand under the table. The defense will show that Bianca Morrison had means, motive, and opportunity to drug her stepmother. That she staged the entire evening to make Diane look guilty. That she fabricated evidence and manipulated everyone around her, including her own father, to serve her own greedy purposes. Walsh gestured dramatically. This isn't a case about Diane Sterling being a criminal. It's a case about a daughter so desperate to control her father's estate that she was willing to destroy an innocent woman's life. The opening statement set the tone for the battle ahead. This wasn't going to be a quick trial. The prosecution called its first witness, Detective Patterson. She walked the jury through the initial investigation, the evidence found at the scene, the prescription bottle with someone else's name on it. When Ms. Morrison showed me the photographs from Mrs. Sterling's purse, what was your reaction? Shaw asked. I was immediately concerned, Patterson said. The documents looked professionally forged. The commitment papers, the psychiatric evaluations, they all had the right official markings, the right language. Someone with expertise had created them. Did you follow up on the signature on the psychiatric evaluation? Yes. The signature purported to be from Dr. Robert Chin. We contacted Dr. Chin in Florida. He confirmed he never evaluated Bianca Morrison and his signature was forged. On cross-examination, Walsh tried to suggest Bianca could have forged the documents herself to frame Diane. But Patterson shut that down quickly. Ms. Morrison had no access to Dr. Chen's signature samples, Patterson said firmly. But Mrs. Sterling did. We found copies of Dr. Chen's signature in Mrs. Sterling's computer files, the same files that contained searches about how to forge medical documents. The second day brought forensic experts who testified about the sedatives found in Diane's system. The timeline showed she'd ingested them during dinner, consistent with Bianca's account. The pharmacologist explained that the dose was high enough to incapacitate someone within 15 to 20 minutes. Would this dosage be fatal? Shaw asked. Not likely fatal but definitely dangerous, the expert replied. Combined with potential head trauma from falling while unconscious, it could have been deadly. Then came the witness from the pharmacy where Patricia Hendricks had reported her prescription stolen 3 weeks before the dinner party. Security footage showed a woman. Then came the witness from the pharmacy where Patricia Hendricks had reported her prescription stolen 3 weeks before the dinner party. Security footage showed a woman partially obscured by sunglasses and a hat. Can you confirm this is the defendant? Walsh demanded during cross-examination. Not 100%, the pharmacist admitted. But the build and height match and she was in the store at the right time. Day 3 brought Robert Garcia to the stand. He was nervous, his hands shaking as he swore the oath, but his testimony was powerful. Matching Diane's description in the store around the time of the theft, though her face was, she drugged me for months, Robert said. I started having memory problems, confusion, dizziness. My business partner noticed I was acting strange. We thought it might be early Alzheimer's. But then my partner hired a private doctor who ran tests and found sedatives in my blood. Sedatives I'd never taken. Did you confront Mrs. Sterling about this? Shaw asked. Yes. She denied it at first, but when I said I was going to the police, she admitted it. She said no one would believe me, that she'd prepared evidence showing I was mentally ill and abusing medication. Robert's voice broke. She said she'd destroy me if I tried to expose her. So I let her go. I just wanted her out of my life. Walsh's cross-examination was brutal, suggesting Robert was lying for revenge, that he was bitter about his failed marriage. But Robert held firm. I'm not lying, he said quietly. I'm telling the truth because I should have done it years ago. Maybe if I had, Bianca wouldn't have gone through this. The fourth day brought Nicole to the stand. Bianca watched her friend walk to the witness box, her head held high despite the visible trembling in her hands. Nicole had been dreading this moment, having to relive what Diane had done to her. Ms. Wright, can you tell the jury about your relationship with the defendant? Shaw asked gently. Nicole took a deep breath. Diane married my father 4 years ago. I was 26. At first she seemed nice enough. But after my father died, things changed. She described the drugging, the memory problems, the eventual commitment to the psychiatric facility. The jury listened with growing horror as Nicole explained the 2 years she'd spent locked up while Diane stole her inheritance. Did you ever see the commitment papers? Shaw asked. Yes, after I was released. They had evaluations signed by Dr. Robert Chin, the same doctor whose signature appears on Bianca's forged documents. The same doctor who never actually evaluated me. Objection. Walsh shot to his feet. The alleged forgery of those documents isn't part of this trial. Your Honor, it establishes a pattern of behavior, Shaw argued. I'll allow it, Judge Santos ruled. Overruled. On cross-examination, Walsh tried to suggest Nicole was mistaken, that she'd really been mentally ill and was now trying to rewrite history. But Nicole wouldn't budge. I was drugged and framed, she said firmly. Just like Diane tried to do to Bianca. The only difference is Bianca was smart enough to catch her in the act. The fifth day brought the paralegal who'd prepared the fake commitment documents. She'd taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony. She looked terrified as she explained how Diane had paid her $50,000 to create the documents and bribe someone at a psychiatric facility. She knew exactly what she wanted, the paralegal said. She gave me samples of Dr. Chen's signature, templates for the forms, everything. This wasn't her first time doing this. Day 6 brought the financial experts. They walked the jury through Diane's shell corporations, the offshore accounts, the pattern of stealing from her victims. Charts and graphs showed how money from Nicole's father, from Robert Garcia, from Diane's other victims had all ended up in the same places. This is a sophisticated operation, the forensic accountant testified. These aren't the actions of someone committing fraud impulsively. This is someone who's done this many times before and perfected their method. Then came Margaret, Diane's sister, testifying via video link. She described how Diane had stolen from her own family, how she'd been doing this since her 20s. My sister is a sociopath, Margaret said bluntly. She has no empathy, no conscience. She sees people as resources to exploit. I've been trying to warn her victims for years, but she's always one step ahead. The prosecution rested after 8 days of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, irrefutable. Bianca felt a surge of hope. They had her. There was no way the jury could find Diane anything but guilty. But Walsh wasn't done fighting. The defense's case began with character witnesses for Diane, people from her charity work, from her church, from her social clubs. They all described her as kind, caring, devoted. Bianca had to sit there and listen to people praise the woman who tried to destroy her life. Then Walsh called his bombshell witness, a psychiatrist who claimed to have evaluated Bianca. Dr. Morrison showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder, the psychiatrist testified. She displayed jealousy toward her stepmother, possessiveness of her father, and a tendency toward manipulation. When did you evaluate Ms. Morrison? Shaw asked on cross-examination. I reviewed her social media posts, her text messages, and interviewed people who knew her, the psychiatrist said. So you never actually met her or conducted a formal evaluation? Well, no, but... And you're being paid how much for your testimony today? Objection. Walsh shouted. I'll allow it, Judge Santos said. $50,000, the psychiatrist admitted. The jury's expressions shifted from interest to skepticism. Shaw had destroyed the witness's credibility in minutes. Walsh tried to call Thomas as a hostile witness, hoping to shake his testimony. But Thomas was unshakable. I was manipulated by Diane, he said clearly. She isolated me from my daughter, controlled our finances, and nearly got my child killed. I will never forgive myself for bringing her into our lives, but I will do everything in my power to make sure she pays for her crimes. Your daughter stands to inherit everything if Diane is convicted, Walsh pointed out. My daughter inherited from her mother. Diane tried to steal that inheritance. This isn't about money. This is about justice. The defense rested after just 3 days. Their case was thin, relying on character assassination rather than actual evidence. But Walsh was a skilled lawyer, and his closing argument was passionate. The prosecution wants you to believe Diane Sterling is some kind of mastermind criminal, he told the jury. But where's the actual proof she drugged anyone that night? We have only Bianca Morrison's word that she saw Diane put something in her food. No other witnesses. No video evidence. Nothing but the word of a young woman with a clear financial motive to lie. Shaw's closing was equally powerful. The defense wants you to ignore everything you've heard. They want you to ignore the pattern of behavior, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the previous victims. They want you to believe this is all an elaborate conspiracy orchestrated by a 28-year-old woman. But use your common sense. Look at the evidence. Look at the timeline. Look at the witnesses. Diane Sterling is guilty and you know it. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 agonizing days where Bianca could barely sleep, could barely eat. She kept replaying the trial in her mind, wondering if they'd done enough, if the jury believed them. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, word came. The jury had reached a verdict. Bianca sat in the courtroom, her father on one side, Nicole on the other. Her hands were ice cold. Grace sat behind her, leaning forward to whisper, "No matter what happens, you did everything right." The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. The forewoman stood, holding a piece of paper. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Santos asked. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" The forewoman looked directly at Diane. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Diane's face went white, then red. She started shouting at her lawyers, at the jury, at everyone. The bailiffs had to restrain her. Thomas buried his face in his hands. Nicole grabbed Bianca's hand and squeezed so hard it hurt. But Bianca just sat there, feeling wave after wave of relief wash over her. They'd won. They'd actually won. The sentencing hearing took place 2 weeks after the verdict. The courtroom was packed again. Reporters, victims, supporters, people who'd followed the case and wanted to see justice served. Bianca wore a burgundy dress her mother had given her years ago, something to connect her to the woman whose memory had driven her through this fight. Diane started screaming, fighting against the bailiffs as they dragged her from the courtroom. Her lawyers looked shell-shocked. Walsh kept muttering about appeals, but everyone knew it was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Shaw gave a brief statement praising the survivors' courage. Grace stood with Bianca, Nicole, Thomas, and Robert, presenting a united front. Justice was served today, Grace told the cameras. But this isn't just about one case. It's about sending a message that financial predators who target vulnerable people will be held accountable. It's about protecting future victims. A reporter pushed forward. Ms. Morrison, how do you feel? Bianca looked at the camera. I feel like I can breathe again. I feel like the nightmare is over. But mostly I feel grateful to everyone who believed me, who fought for me, who stood with me. And I want other victims out there to know, you can fight back. You can win. That evening, they held a small celebration at Grace's office. It wasn't a party exactly, the mood was too somber for that, but it was a moment to acknowledge what they'd accomplished. 45 years, Nicole kept saying, shaking her head in disbelief. I never thought. Judge Santos is tough, Grace said. And she saw exactly what Diane was. That sentence isn't just about punishment, it's about making sure Diane never gets another chance to hurt anyone. Thomas sat quietly in the corner, looking exhausted but peaceful. When Bianca sat beside him, he put his arm around her. Thank you for not giving up on me, he said softly. You're my dad. I never give up on you. I was so stupid. No. You were grieving and lonely and human. Diane is the only one to blame here. Bianca leaned against his shoulder. But now it's over. We can move forward. The foundation, Thomas said. Let's make it real. Let's help people. Over the next few days, the media attention gradually faded. Diane's appeals began immediately, but Grace assured them they were doomed to fail. The evidence was too strong, the trial too clean, the sentence too justified. Bianca returned to her apartment, to her life, to the normal routine she'd been denied for months. But normal felt different now. She'd been through fire and come out the other side. She was stronger, harder, more certain of who she was. A week after sentencing, she received a letter forwarded through the prosecutor's office. It was from a woman in Texas, one of Diane's early victims that the investigation had uncovered. The woman thanked Bianca for having the courage to fight, said seeing Diane convicted had given her closure she'd never thought possible. That letter changed something in Bianca. She realized the impact of what she'd done extended far beyond herself. By refusing to be a victim, by fighting back, she'd helped everyone Diane had ever hurt. She called a meeting with Nicole, Grace, her father, and Robert. The foundation, she said. Let's not just make it about financial abuse. Let's make it about all kinds of predatory behavior. Let's give people resources to recognize manipulation, to protect themselves, to fight back. Legal help, counseling, education, everything we wished we'd had. I want to run the counseling side, Nicole said immediately. I've been working toward my license. This could be my full-time focus. I'll handle the legal aid portion, Grace offered. Pro bono work for victims who can't afford representation. I'll fund it, Thomas said. Everything I have that isn't tied to Diane, it's yours. We'll build something that lasts. I'll help with operations, Robert added. I've rebuilt my business over the past few years. I can contribute both time and money. They spent the next 3 hours planning. By the end, they had the rough outline of something powerful. An organization that would change lives, that would honor the survivors and prevent future victims. Bianca looked around the table at these people who'd become her family through shared trauma. They'd all been targeted by the same predator. They'd all fought back. And now they were going to make sure others had the tools to do the same. That night, Bianca stood at her apartment window, looking out over the city lights. She thought about the woman who'd tried to destroy her, sitting in a cell, facing decades behind bars. She thought about her mother who'd taught her to be strong. And she thought about herself, not the scared girl who'd watched Diane drop a pill into her dinner, but the woman who'd switched the plates and fought for justice. Diane had tried to erase her. Instead, Bianca had become more real, more solid, more herself than ever before. The revenge was complete. But more importantly, the healing was beginning. And the future was hers to build. 6 months after Diane's sentencing, Bianca stood in an empty storefront on Main Street, envisioning what it would become. The space was larger than she'd expected to find in their price range, 3,000 square feet with high ceilings and large windows that let in natural light. "It's perfect," Nicole said, walking through the space with a measuring tape. Thomas stood near the door, his phone pressed to his ear as he talked to contractors. In the months since the trial, he'd thrown himself into the foundation work with an intensity that both impressed and worried Bianca. He was trying to atone, she knew, trying to make up for bringing Diane into their lives. "Dad," Bianca called. "Take a break. You've been on the phone for 2 hours." He held up one finger, finished his conversation, then joined them. "The contractors can start next week. 4 weeks to build out the offices, install the security system, and make it accessible." "And we're sure about the security?" Nicole asked. She'd been adamant about having robust security measures. Too many victims of predators felt unsafe, and the foundation needed to be a place where they could feel protected. "Top of the line," Thomas confirmed. "Cameras, controlled access, panic buttons in every office. Anyone who comes here for help will be safe." They decided to call it the Sarah Morrison Center for Advocacy and Protection. It would offer free legal services, counseling, financial planning, education, and support groups for people who'd been victimized by family members or intimate partners. Grace had recruited 3 other attorneys to volunteer their time. Nicole was bringing in 2 other counselors she'd worked with. The plan was ambitious. They'd help people identify predatory behavior before it escalated. They'd teach warning signs. They'd provide resources for escape and recovery. And they'd pursue legal action against abusers whenever possible. "I've been thinking," Bianca said as they walked through the empty space. "We should have educational programs too. Go to schools, community centers, anywhere people will listen. Teach them about financial manipulation, emotional abuse, isolation tactics." "I love that," Nicole said. "Prevention is just as important as intervention." "Robert said he'd fund the educational wing," Thomas added. "He wants to develop a curriculum we can share nationally." Robert had become an unexpected pillar of the foundation. He'd rebuilt his tech company successfully and was now using his resources to fight the kind of predator who'd nearly destroyed him. He'd also become close with all of them, a fellow survivor who understood what they'd been through. Over the next month, the center came together. Local businesses donated furniture. A law firm donated computers and office equipment. A counseling practice donated books and resources for their library. The community rallied around them in a way that was both humbling and energizing. Bianca found herself working 18-hour days, but she didn't mind. This work gave her purpose. Every time she felt exhausted, she thought about the letter from that woman in Texas, or the email from another of Diane's victims, or the call from someone who'd heard about the center and wanted to share their own story. She wasn't just healing herself. She was helping others heal too. Her father was healing as well, though differently. He'd started attending a support group for people who'd been manipulated by intimate partners. He saw a therapist twice a week. He'd reconnected with old friends he'd lost touch with during his marriage to Diane. "I was so lost," he admitted to Bianca one evening as they painted the walls of what would become the main counseling room. "After your mother died, I didn't know who I was anymore. Diane took advantage of that. She saw a vulnerable man and exploited him." "But you're not that person anymore," Bianca said. "No. I'm learning to be whole again on my own. Not dependent on a partner to define me." He dipped his brush in the paint. "Your mother would have been proud of you, you know? How you fought back. How you're helping others now. She'd be proud of you too, Dad. For admitting what happened and doing the work to change." They painted in comfortable silence for a while. Then Thomas spoke again. "I've been thinking about dating again," he said carefully. "Not now, but eventually. Is that okay with you?" Bianca considered the question. A year ago, the thought of her father with someone new would have upset her. But now, after everything, she understood that loneliness was dangerous. That her father deserved companionship and love. "It's okay," she said. "As long as you take your time. As long as you listen to your gut. As long as you let me meet anyone you're serious about." Thomas laughed. "Deal." The Sarah Morrison Center officially opened on a Saturday in late spring. They held a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by local officials, press, and dozens of people who'd heard about their mission. Detective Patterson came, as did several other officers from the department. The prosecutor, Kenneth Shaw, gave a speech about the importance of supporting survivors. But the moment that mattered most to Bianca was when their first client walked through the door on Monday morning. Her name was Rachel and she was trembling. She'd called ahead, explaining that her husband had been systematically isolating her, controlling their finances, and threatening her whenever she tried to assert independence. She'd left him 2 days ago and was staying at a friend's house, but she had no money, no lawyer, and no idea what to do next. Nicole sat with Rachel for 3 hours just listening. Then Grace came in to discuss legal options. They connected Rachel with a domestic violence shelter, helped her open a new bank account her husband couldn't access, and started the process of getting a restraining order. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," Rachel said through her tears. "He's so charming. Everyone loves him. I thought I was crazy." "You're not crazy," Bianca told her. "You're strong. You left. That's the hardest part." By the end of that first week, they'd helped 8 people. By the end of the first month, 23. Word spread. The local news did a feature. Then a national morning show picked up the story, survivors fighting back by helping other survivors. Bianca did the interview with Nicole beside her. They talked about Diane, about the trial, about why they'd started the center. "We want people to know that you can escape," Nicole said to the camera. "You can rebuild. We did it and we're going to help as many others as we can do it too." The interview brought a flood of calls and emails. People from across the country reaching out, asking for help, sharing their stories. It was overwhelming but also affirming. This was bigger than they'd imagined. The need was everywhere. "We need to scale up," Robert said at their monthly board meeting. "This can't just be one center in one city. This needs to be a national network." They began working on a model that could be replicated. Training programs for counselors and lawyers. Standardized resources. A hotline. A website with educational materials. Within 6 months, 3 other cities had reached out about opening Sarah Morrison centers in their communities. Bianca's personal life began to stabilize as well. She'd been so focused on the foundation that she'd barely thought about herself, about her own dreams and goals. But now, with systems in place and staff hired, she had time to breathe. She'd always loved design, colors, spaces, how environments affected mood and comfort. Her mother had encouraged that interest, even suggesting Bianca might become an interior designer someday. During Diane's time in their lives, Bianca had let that dream fade. Now she revived it. She enrolled in online courses, studying design principles and business management. She started a portfolio, taking on small projects, redesigning friends' apartments, helping local businesses with their office spaces. The work felt creative and fulfilling in a different way than the foundation work. Nicole noticed. "You're glowing lately," she said one afternoon as they reviewed applications for new counseling positions. "I'm happy," Bianca realized. "Actually happy. Not just surviving or fighting. Happy. You deserve it. So do you." Bianca studied her friend. "Are you dating anyone?" Nicole laughed. "No time. Between the center and my own therapy practice, I barely sleep. Make time. Life isn't just about work," says the woman who's here 14 hours a day. "I'm cutting back," Bianca protested. "Starting next month, I'm only working 8-hour days. Maybe 9. They both laughed. But Bianca was serious. She'd fought so hard to keep her life, and now she wanted to actually live it. The foundation was important, crucial even. But it couldn't be everything. That resolution was tested when a reporter called asking for an interview about Diane. There were rumors she was trying to appeal her sentence again, claiming new evidence. Bianca's stomach dropped at the news. "What kind of evidence?" she asked Grace immediately. "Nothing credible," Grace assured her. "Her new lawyer is grasping at straws. The appeals court will reject it." And they did just 2 weeks later. Diane's appeal was denied. Her sentence stood. She wouldn't be eligible for parole for decades. Bianca felt relief but also something else, a finality. This chapter was truly closed. Diane was in prison and would stay there. The foundation was thriving. Her relationship with her father was strong. She was building a career she loved. She'd won not just in court but in life. 1 year after Diane's sentencing, they held an anniversary event at the center. Survivors came from across the state, people they'd helped, people who'd heard about their work, people who just wanted to support the mission. Rachel was there, now working full-time and living independently. She'd just finalized her divorce and was taking classes at the community college. She gave a speech about how the center had saved her life. "A year ago I had nothing," Rachel said. "No money, no support, no hope. I walked into this center terrified and broken. And these people," she gestured to Bianca, Nicole, Grace, and Thomas, They gave me tools to rebuild. Not just practical help, but the belief that I deserved better. That I wasn't crazy or weak. That I could have a future. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as Bianca helped clean up after the event, her father approached her. "Your mother would be so proud," he said, echoing the words he'd spoken a year ago. "I know, Dad. I'm proud too. Of the woman you've become. Of how you took the worst moment of your life and turned it into something meaningful." "We all did," Bianca said, looking around at Nicole, at Grace, at Robert, at all the volunteers and staff who made the center work. "We all decided to fight back. To refuse to be destroyed. That's what makes this work." That night, alone in her apartment, Bianca looked at the photo of her mother she kept on her nightstand. She thought about the woman who'd raised her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never accept being diminished. "I did it, Mom," she whispered. "I fought back. I won. And now I'm helping others do the same." She felt, for the first time since her mother's death, truly at peace. The foundation was her legacy and her mother's. Diane had tried to erase both of them. Instead, they built something that would outlast Diane's crimes, that would help countless people, that would change lives. Revenge wasn't about hurting Diane. Prison was doing that. Revenge was about living well, about succeeding, about building something beautiful from the ashes of what Diane had tried to destroy. And by that measure, Bianca's revenge was complete. But her life, her real life, full of purpose and meaning and hope, was just beginning. The charity gala was held at the Grand Hotel downtown, a glittering affair with 200 guests and enough donations to fund 3 more Sarah Morrison centers across the country. Bianca wore an emerald green dress that her mother would have loved, her hair pulled back in an elegant updo. She worked the room with confidence, talking to donors, thanking volunteers, sharing stories of lives changed. "Ms. Morrison?" A voice interrupted her conversation with a potential corporate sponsor. She turned to see a tall man in a tailored charcoal suit, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "I'm Julian Torres. I've been wanting to meet you all evening." There was something about his smile that made Bianca pause, genuine warmth without the practiced charm she'd learned to distrust. He had kind brown eyes and an easy manner that put her at ease immediately. "Nice to meet you," she said. "Are you a donor?" "Actually, I'm an architect. I heard about your work and wanted to offer my services. When you're ready to expand to more cities, I'd like to help design the spaces. Pro bono, of course." They talked for 20 minutes, and Bianca found herself genuinely engaged. Julian understood immediately what they were trying to create. Safe spaces where survivors could begin healing. He'd lost his own sister to domestic violence years ago and had since dedicated part of his practice to designing shelters and support centers. "I'd love to see what you've done with your current location," Julian said as the evening wound down. "Come by next week," Bianca heard herself say. "Tuesday afternoon?" He smiled. "I'll be there." Nicole cornered Bianca as Julian walked away. "Who was that?" "An architect offering to help with the expansion." "Ah, and that blush on your face." "I'm not blushing." "You absolutely are." Nicole grinned. "It's okay to be interested in someone, you know. You're allowed to have a life outside the foundation." "I am having a life outside the foundation," Bianca protested, though it was mostly true now. She'd been taking her design classes seriously, had even landed 2 paid clients for residential design work. Her portfolio was growing, and she'd started thinking about launching her own firm eventually. "Good. Because you deserve happiness." Nicole squeezed her arm. "Real happiness. Not just satisfaction from work, but joy. Connection. Maybe even love." Bianca thought about that as she drove home that night. For the past year and a half, since the night she switched those plates, her life had been about survival and then rebuilding. She'd been so focused on the foundation and healing that she'd barely thought about relationships or romance. The idea of dating someone terrified her, if she was honest. After watching what Diane did to her father, after experiencing Diane's manipulation firsthand, trusting anyone felt dangerous. But Nicole was right. She couldn't let Diane's poison affect her forever. She'd won the battle. Now she needed to actually live. Julian came by the center that Tuesday as promised. Bianca gave him a tour, explaining their philosophy about space design. Open areas that didn't feel institutional, private rooms for counseling that felt safe but not confining, colors and lighting that promoted calm and healing. "You've thought about this deeply," Julian observed. "We learned a lot from our clients about what they needed to feel comfortable." Bianca showed him the children's area they'd recently added, with toys and books and soft places to sit. "A lot of our clients are mothers. They need to know their kids are safe and occupied while they deal with difficult things. Julian took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and by the end of the tour had sketched preliminary concepts for 2 new centers. But he didn't leave after the tour ended. "Would you want to grab coffee?" he asked. "I'd love to hear more about your plans for expansion." They went to a cafe down the street. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into a 3-hour conversation about architecture, design, their families, their dreams. Bianca found herself sharing more than she'd intended, including the story of Diane. "That's why you're so passionate about this," Julian said, his expression full of understanding. "It started as survival. Then it became about helping others survive. Now," Bianca paused, trying to articulate what the foundation meant to her. "Now it's about creating something that outlasts the trauma. Something that takes the worst experience of my life and transforms it into hope for other people." "That's beautiful," Julian said simply. They started seeing each other regularly after that. Coffee meetings turned into dinner dates. Dinner dates turned into long walks through the city, talking about everything and nothing. Julian was patient, never pushing, always respectful of Bianca's boundaries. He understood that she needed to take things slowly. "I like him," Nicole said after meeting Julian at a foundation event. "He's genuine. No red flags." "Are you sure?" Bianca asked, half joking but also half serious. "You're good at spotting manipulators." "I'm sure. He looks at you like you're the most interesting person in the room. And when you're not looking, he smiles to himself like he can't believe his luck." Nicole laughed at Bianca's expression. "I'm serious. That man is smitten and it's adorable." Thomas met Julian a month into their relationship. They had dinner at Thomas's house, which he'd completely remodeled after the divorce from Diane was finalized. He'd erased every trace of her from the space, making it his own again. "So you're an architect," Thomas said as they ate. "Yes, sir. I specialize in community spaces and residential design." "And you're working with the foundation?" "I am. I'm designing the new centers in Portland and Austin. And I've been helping Bianca think through her design business." Thomas glanced at his daughter. "Design business?" "I was going to tell you," Bianca said. "I'm launching Morrison Design next month. Residential and small commercial projects. Julian's been giving me advice on the business side." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Thomas looked genuinely pleased. "Your mother always said you had an eye for design." Later, after Julian left, Thomas pulled Bianca aside. "He's good for you," her father said. "I can see it in how you are with him. Relaxed. Happy. It's still early, Dad." "I know. But don't let what happened with Diane make you afraid to trust people. Not everyone is a predator. Some people are just good." Bianca hugged him. "When did you get so wise?" "Therapy," he said with a laugh. "So much therapy." The foundation continued to grow. They'd helped over 300 people by the end of the year. The centers in Portland and Austin opened to huge community support. They'd trained 40 counselors and 15 lawyers across the network. The educational program had reached 10,000 people through community workshops. Robert took on more leadership, becoming the foundation's operations director. He had a gift for systems and scaling, and under his guidance they became more efficient and effective. He'd also started dating someone himself, a kind woman named Andrea who owned a bookstore and had no interest in his money. "Look at us," Robert said at their year-end board meeting. "A bunch of survivors building something incredible." "More than surviving," Grace added. "Thriving." And they were. All of them had rebuilt their lives in meaningful ways. Nicole's counseling practice was flourishing alongside her foundation work. Grace had been named one of the top pro bono attorneys in the state. Thomas had become a sought-after speaker on financial manipulation and elder abuse. Robert's tech company had gone public. And Bianca had launched Morrison Design 6 months earlier and already had a waiting list of clients. She specialized in creating beautiful, functional spaces for women-owned businesses and nonprofits. Her signature style combined elegance with accessibility, spaces that felt both aspirational and welcoming. Julian had become her partner in more ways than one. He collaborated with her on several projects, and they'd started talking about forming a joint practice, Torres and Morrison Design. The idea excited her in a way she hadn't expected. "Are you sure?" she asked him one evening as they sat in her apartment, reviewing potential office spaces for their combined practice. "I've never been more sure of anything," Julian said, taking her hand. "You're brilliant at what you do, and we work well together. Besides, I love you." It was the first time he'd said it. Bianca felt her heart skip a beat. "I love you too," she said, surprised by how easy it was to say, how true it felt. They celebrated the foundation's second anniversary with another gala, even bigger than the first. 500 guests. Donations pouring in. Politicians making speeches about their work. It was validating but also overwhelming. Bianca slipped out to the balcony for some air. Julian followed her. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. It's a lot sometimes. All these people, all this attention. 2 years ago I was just trying to survive. Now I'm running a national organization and a design firm. You don't have to do everything yourself, you know. That's why you have a team." "I know. But I feel responsible. All these people depending on us are getting the help they need because you refuse to be a victim," Julian interrupted gently. "You did something incredible, Bianca. You took your trauma and transformed it. But that doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." She leaned against him. "When did you get so wise?" "Therapy," he said, echoing what her father had said months ago. They both laughed. Inside, the gala continued. Rachel gave another speech, now working for the foundation full-time as their client services coordinator. Other survivors shared their stories. The room was filled with hope and healing and proof that recovery was possible. Looking at all of it, Bianca felt a sense of completeness she'd never expected. Diane had tried to destroy her, but instead, Bianca had built something beautiful. She'd found love with Julian, success in her career, purpose in the foundation. She'd helped hundreds of people escape situations like the one she'd narrowly avoided. Her revenge wasn't about punishment, though Diane rotting in prison certainly provided some satisfaction. Her revenge was this: living brilliantly, loving fully, succeeding beyond measure. Refusing to let Diane's evil define her or diminish her. Later that night, back at her apartment with Julian, Bianca stood at the window looking out at the city lights. "What are you thinking?" Julian asked. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. Not just to have survived, but to have found all this on the other side. The foundation. My design work. My dad being healthy and whole again." She turned to face him. "Diane tried to take everything from me. Instead, she gave me something I never would have had otherwise: clarity about what matters. Purpose. Strength." "You always had the strength," Julian said. "She just forced you to use it." Maybe that was true. But Bianca preferred to think she'd grown into her strength, that she'd chosen to fight back, that every decision after switching those plates had been hers. And now, standing in her apartment with the man she loved, looking out at a city full of people she'd helped, thinking about the business she was building and the father she'd reconnected with and the friends who'd become family, now she knew beyond doubt. She'd won. Not just against Diane but for herself. For her future. For all the possibilities that lay ahead. The nightmare was over. The dream had just begun. The morning of the grand opening of Morrison Design's second location, Bianca woke to sunlight streaming through her windows and Julian's arm draped across her waist. They'd moved in together 6 months ago into a renovated loft they'd designed themselves. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, plants everywhere, artwork from local artists on every wall. "Big day," Julian murmured, still half asleep. "Huge day," Bianca corrected, kissing his shoulder. "We're opening offices in 3 states now. That's not big. That's massive." Morrison Design had exploded over the past year. What started as Bianca's solo venture had grown into Torres and Morrison Design, with 15 employees and projects across the country. They specialized in creating spaces for nonprofits and women-owned businesses, bringing beauty and functionality to organizations that often had to settle for whatever they could afford. But the Austin office opening was special for another reason. It would house both Morrison Design and the third Sarah Morrison Center, creating a hub where survivors could access both counseling services and job training. Bianca had designed a space that flowed between the two organizations, showing that healing and building a new life were connected, not separate. The ceremony started at 11. The street was packed with supporters, donors, clients, and curious locals who'd heard about their work. Bianca stood at the ribbon with Nicole on one side and her father on the other, facing a crowd of hundreds. 2 years ago, Bianca began, her voice carrying over the crowd, I was fighting for my life. Someone I should have been able to trust tried to destroy me. But instead of being destroyed, I fought back. And in fighting back, I found my purpose. She gestured to the building behind her. This center represents something bigger than just counseling or legal help or design services. It represents the possibility of transformation. It shows that you can take the worst moments of your life and build something meaningful from them. That survival isn't just about escaping, it's about thriving afterwards. Nicole spoke next, talking about the counseling programs they developed. Then Thomas spoke about the educational initiatives that were now being used in schools across 5 states. Grace talked about the legal victories they'd won for survivors. Robert explained the expansion plans, 10 more centers over the next 3 years. But the most powerful moment came when Rachel stepped up to the microphone. "I was the first person through the doors of the first Sarah Morrison Center," Rachel said. "I was broke, terrified, and convinced I had no future. These people gave me hope. They gave me tools. They gave me myself back." Her voice strengthened. "Now I work for the foundation helping other people find their way out. And I'm here to tell everyone listening, if you're in a bad situation you can escape. You can rebuild. We're here to help." The crowd erupted in applause. Bianca cut the ribbon and people flooded into the new center for tours. The space was beautiful, Bianca's best work. The counseling rooms had large windows with privacy screens, plants, and warm colors that promoted calm. The legal offices were professional but not intimidating. The children's area was bright and playful. The job training center had state-of-the-art computers and a small workshop for teaching skills like woodworking and graphic design. And the Morrison Design offices on the second floor showcased what was possible when form and function merged perfectly. Every detail had been considered, every space optimized for both beauty and productivity. "You did it," Julian whispered to Bianca as they watched people explore the space. "You created exactly what you envisioned." "We did it," she corrected. "This doesn't happen without you." Later that evening, after the ceremony and tours and speeches, there was a small private dinner. Just family and close friends. Nicole, Grace, her father, Robert and Andrea, Julian, Rachel, Detective Patterson, and a few others who'd been crucial to their journey. Thomas stood to make a toast. "When my daughter saved her own life by switching those plates," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I didn't know she was also saving mine. I didn't know she was starting a movement that would help hundreds of people. I didn't know she was building something that would honor her mother's memory in the most beautiful way possible." He looked at Bianca. "Your mother would be so proud. Not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you've become. Strong, compassionate, brilliant. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into the best thing that ever happened to so many others." Everyone raised their glasses. Bianca felt tears sting her eyes but didn't try to hide them. These were good tears. Happy tears. To Bianca, her father said. To survival. To transformation. To never giving up. To Bianca, the table echoed. After dinner, Bianca stepped outside for air. The Austin evening was warm, the sky full of stars. She thought about where she'd been 2 years ago, terrified, alone, fighting for her life. She thought about all the moments between then and now, the trial, building the foundation, meeting Julian, launching her business, healing with her father. "Mind if I join you?" Nicole asked, stepping onto the patio. "Please." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights. "I got a letter from Diane," Nicole said finally. Bianca turned sharply. "What?" "She wrote to me from prison. Asking for forgiveness. Claiming she's found religion and wants to make amends." Nicole's laugh was bitter. "She wants me to advocate for early parole." "What did you say?" "Nothing. I threw the letter away." Nicole looked at Bianca. "She wrote to you too, didn't she?" 3 months ago. Same thing. Sorry, changed, deserves another chance." Bianca shook her head. "I didn't respond either. She doesn't get to manipulate us anymore. Not even from prison." "Good." They were quiet again. Then Nicole spoke. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't seen her drop that pill? If you'd just eaten your dinner like normal?" "Every day," Bianca admitted. "I'd be in a psychiatric facility, drugged and helpless. Diane would have my money. My dad would probably be dead by now from the increased medication she was giving him. And you'd still be alone, thinking no one would ever believe you. Instead you're here. We're all here. Thriving." "Yeah," Bianca smiled. "We are." Back inside, Julian was talking with Thomas about a project. The older man wanted to renovate his house again, make it even more his own space. Grace was showing Robert photos of her new puppy. Rachel was animated, telling Detective Patterson about her plans to go to law school. This was her family now. Not bound by blood, but by shared trauma and shared triumph. By understanding what it meant to fight back, to refuse to be destroyed, to build something meaningful from pain. Later, as she and Julian drove back to their hotel, Bianca's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I saw the news about your opening. I was one of Diane's victims from 15 years ago. Seeing her in prison and seeing what you've built gives me hope that I can rebuild too. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for winning. Thank you for showing us all that survival is possible. Bianca showed Julian the message, tears streaming down her face. That's why we do this, he said softly. That's what makes it all worth it. They spent the night talking about the future. Opening more centers. Expanding the design firm internationally. Maybe eventually writing a book about their experiences. Maybe starting a podcast. There were so many possibilities, so many ways to help people, so many dreams to chase. What do you want? Julian asked. Not for the foundation or the business. What do you want for yourself? Bianca thought about it. I want to keep designing beautiful spaces. I want to marry you someday. I want kids maybe. I want Sunday dinners with Dad and Nicole and everyone. I want to wake up every morning grateful for my life instead of angry about what almost happened. That sounds perfect, Julian said. And for the record, I want to marry you too. Someday soon. They fell asleep tangled together, planning a future that Diane had tried to steal but couldn't. 1 year later, Bianca stood in front of an audience of 500 at a TEDx event, telling her story. When someone tries to destroy you, she said, you have two choices. You can let them succeed or you can fight back. I chose to fight back. But revenge isn't about hurting the person who hurt you. Revenge is about living so well, succeeding so completely, that their attempt to destroy you becomes the catalyst for your greatest achievements. She clicked to the next slide, showing photos of all the Sarah Morrison centers, all the people they'd helped, all the lives changed. This is my revenge. Not anger or violence or bitterness. This building something beautiful. Helping others. Refusing to let trauma define me. She paused. Diane Sterling is in prison. She'll be there for decades. But I'm not free because she's locked up. I'm free because I chose to be. I'm free because I took back my power and used it to create something meaningful. The audience erupted in applause. After her talk, dozens of people approached her with their own stories, asking for advice, thanking her for sharing. One woman waited until everyone else had left. She was older, maybe 65, with kind eyes and weathered hands. My daughter was in a situation like yours, the woman said quietly. She didn't make it out. He killed her before she could escape. Bianca's heart broke. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep helping people. Keep showing them that escape is possible, that life after abuse is possible. My daughter didn't get that chance. But maybe the work you're doing will save someone else's daughter. They hugged, two strangers connected by tragedy and hope. And Bianca renewed her commitment to the work, to helping as many people as she could, to making sure her survival meant something beyond just herself. Morrison Design opened its 5th location. The Sarah Morrison Center expanded to 12 cities. The foundation's hotline received thousands of calls. Their educational programs reached 50,000 people. Lives were saved, families were protected, futures were rebuilt. And through it all, Bianca lived. Really lived. She married Julian in a small ceremony surrounded by loved ones. She designed homes and offices and community spaces that brought beauty into the world. She maintained relationships with her father, with Nicole, with all the people who'd become her chosen family. She traveled. She learned. She grew. She laughed. She cried. She experienced the full range of human emotion and experience that Diane had tried to steal from her. On the 3rd anniversary of the night she switched those plates, Bianca visited her mother's grave. She brought fresh flowers and sat on the grass, talking to the headstone as if her mother could hear. I did it, Mom, she said. I saved myself. I built something meaningful. I found love. I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. She traced her mother's name on the stone. Diane tried to erase me and erase your memory. Instead, I made sure everyone would remember you. The foundation bears your name. Thousands of people have been helped because of you, because of what you taught me, because of the legacy you left. A breeze rustled the trees overhead, and Bianca chose to believe it was her mother's way of responding, of saying she was proud. That evening, Bianca hosted dinner at the loft. 20 people crowded around the massive table Julian had built. Her father, Nicole, Grace, Robert and Andrea, Rachel and her new girlfriend, Julian's family, foundation staff, design team members. Looking around at all these faces, all these people she loved and who loved her back, Bianca felt complete. Oh, ill. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Diane Sterling's latest appeal denied. Will serve full sentence. She showed Julian, who read it and smiled. Good. But Bianca felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no triumph. Just nothing. Diane was irrelevant to her life now. The woman who tried to destroy her had become a footnote, while Bianca had become the author of her own story. That was the ultimate revenge. making your would-be destroyer irrelevant. Building a life so full and meaningful that they became just a cautionary tale, a chapter in the past, nothing more. Toast time, Thomas announced, standing with his glass. To my daughter who refused to be a victim. To this family we've built from the ashes of trauma. To the future we're creating together. To transformation, redemption, and love. Everyone raised their glasses. Bianca stood, looking at each person around the table. Every single one of them there because she'd chosen to fight back, because she'd switched those plates, because she'd refused to accept Diane's version of her fate. To survival, Bianca said. To thriving. To us. As glasses clinked and conversation flowed and laughter filled the loft, Bianca felt her mother's presence in the room. Felt her approval, her pride, her love. Diane Sterling had tried to poison her dinner that night 2 years ago. Instead, Bianca had fed her own poison back to her. But the real victory wasn't in Diane's downfall. It was in everything Bianca had built afterwards. A successful business. A loving relationship. A foundation that changed lives. A family forged through shared trauma and triumph. A future bright with possibility. Diane was in prison. Bianca was free. Not just physically free but free in every way that mattered. Free from fear. Free from trauma. Free to live, to love, to create, to dream. She'd won not by destroying her enemy, but by building something beautiful. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.